Imagine for a moment that your being is not just a body but a vast and complex kingdom. A kingdom with its own government, its own laws and its own internal economy, designed by nature to prosper in a state of perfect harmony. But for most of us, this inner kingdom is in a state of civil war. There are three great powers, three centers of intelligence that are constantly fighting for control. In the capital resides the first brain, the mind, the logical architect. It tries to govern with cold decrees, rigid plans, and the tyranny of reason, often ignoring the needs of the rest of the kingdom. In the heart of the territory, you'll find the second brain, the heart, the emotional generator. With its immense power, it often unleashes storms of feelings that flood the kingdom, completely ignoring the architect's plans. And in the depths, in the earth itself, operates the third brain, the gut, the ancestral guardian. It reacts with primal intuitions, with survival instincts that both the mind and the heart often despise as primitive. This conflict, this lack of coherence between what we think, what we feel, and what we intuit, is the fundamental cause of our discomfort. Anxiety, inflammation, chronic fatigue are not diseases. They are the symptoms of a divided kingdom. But in the center of this kingdom, there is a throne that has remained vacant for too long. The sovereign's throne, the throne of the consciousness that has the power to listen to all its advisors and unify them under a single harmonious will. That sovereign is you. This audiobook is a manual of inner governance. It is not a collection of remedies for symptoms, but a guide for the unification of the kingdom. You will learn to understand the language of your three brains. You will learn to calm the tyranny of the mind, to harmonize the wisdom of the heart, and to trust the intelligence of the gut. You will discover that healing is not a battle you win, but a peace you establish. The council of your inner kingdom awaits your leadership. Chapter 1. The first brain, the mind, the royal architect. Your first act of governance is not to issue decrees at random, but to understand the nature of your council. Starting with the most eloquent, most dominant, and often most tyrannical advisor, we enter the capital of your kingdom, the ivory tower of thought. Welcome to the domain of the first brain, the mind. The rational mind, the neocortex, is the royal architect, the great strategist and legislator of your kingdom. It is the faculty that distinguishes you from the rest of the animal kingdom. It is not simply an information processor. It is a creator of worlds. Its power lies in three divine abilities. It can learn from the past, it can project itself into the future, and it can create abstract concepts that do not exist in the physical world, such as justice, honor, or failure. The mind is the legislator. The fundamental laws of your kingdom, those that govern the behavior of each of your subjects, from your organs to your trillions of cells, are not the laws of physics, but the laws of your beliefs. A belief, as we have already explored, is a thought that has been practiced until it becomes a truth accepted by the subconscious. In the context of our inner kingdom, our beliefs are the constitution. They are the supreme law. Every thought we have, every action we take, must adhere to this fundamental constitution. If the constitution of your kingdom contains the law, "I am not worthy of love," you may consciously try to attract a healthy relationship, but your actions and energy will sabotage the process to remain loyal to the supreme law. The conscious mind, the architect, is the one who writes and ratifies these laws. And once a law has been ratified, the rest of the kingdom, from the nervous system to the immune system, obeys it without question. The body does not have the capacity to determine whether the law is good or bad, whether it is true or false. Its only function is to execute it to perfection. The placebo and nocebo. The proof of legislative power. The clearest and scientifically irrefutable testimony of the mind's power as a legislator of biology is the phenomenon of the placebo and nocebo effect. Imagine an experiment. A group of people with an ailment are given a sugar pill, but they are told with great authority by a medical figure that it is a new and revolutionary medicine that will cure them. A significant percentage of these people experiences a real and measurable improvement in their symptoms. Some are even completely cured. What happened here? The power was not in the pill. The power was in the belief. The royal architect, the patient's mind, accepted a new law. I am taking a substance that is healing me. This new law, this new article in their constitution, was sent as a decree to the entire kingdom, and the body as the perfect subject obeyed. It mobilized its own vast inner pharmacy, its natural opiates, its immune cells, its regeneration processes, to create a physical effect that corresponded to the new law. The mind wrote the law and the body manifested it. The nocebo effect is the dark twin of this process, and it is even more common in our daily lives. It is when a negative belief creates a negative physical effect. If an authority figure, like a doctor or a news outlet, tells you this disease is incurable or you have an 80% chance of having a heart attack, and your mind accepts that statement as a law, your body will begin to obey it. The stress and fear generated by the belief will release cortisol, increase inflammation, and suppress immune function, creating the perfect biochemical environment for the prophecy to be fulfilled. Most of us live in a state of chronic nocebo, programmed by a culture that constantly tells us about illness, danger, and inevitable decline. We have ratified, without knowing it, a constitution of fragility. The royal decrees, thoughts as daily commands, if beliefs are the constitution, our habitual thoughts are the royal decrees that are issued every day. Every thought is a command that is sent to the provinces of the kingdom, a thought of criticism toward your body. I hate my wrinkles, I'm so fat, is a decree that orders your cells to operate in an environment of stress and rejection. A thought of anxiety about the future. What if I get sick? God, what if I can't pay the bills? Is a decree that tells your nervous system to prepare for an imminent war, diverting resources from healing and digestion. A thought of gratitude for the health you already possess is a decree of coherence, a command that tells your cells that they are in a safe and prosperous environment and that they can dedicate themselves to their work of regeneration. The wise sovereign understands that his inner dialogue is not a private monologue. That is the daily legislation of his kingdom, and he becomes a conscious ruler, deliberately choosing the laws and decrees that promote the health and prosperity of his land. We have seen the immense power of the mind as the great legislator of the kingdom. Its beliefs are the constitution, its thoughts are the decrees. But what happens when this architect, however brilliant, forgets that he is only an advisor and proclaims himself as the only king? What happens when logic tries to govern the mystery of the body and emotions without listening to the rest of the council? The shadow of the architect, the tyranny of the rational mind. The immense power of the mind is the great legislator of the kingdom. Its beliefs are the constitution, its thoughts are the decrees. When this architect operates in harmony with life, he is a force of astonishing creativity and order. But what happens when this architect, however brilliant, forgets that he is only an advisor and proclaims himself as the only king? What happens when logic tries to govern the mystery of the body and emotions without listening to the rest of the council? Then the civil war begins. In our modern culture, we have been trained to glorify this rational architect above all else. We have crowned logic and exiled feeling and intuition, considering them primitive, unreliable, and even dangerous. And in doing so, we have created a profoundly imbalanced kingdom. The tyranny of the rational mind manifests in several devastating ways for our health. Disconnection from the body. The tyrannical architect sees the body not as an intelligent partner, but as an imperfect machine, a vehicle that must be controlled, disciplined, and forced to obey. He ignores its whispers. When the body sends him a signal of fatigue, the tyrannical mind overrides it with a decree of productivity and a dose of caffeine. When the body sends him a signal of discomfort through a gut instinct, an intuitive no, the mind dismisses it as irrational and proceeds with the logical plan. When the body manifests a symptom of pain, the mind does not ask about the message, but immediately looks for a way to silence the messenger with a painkiller. This chronic disconnection turns the body into a foreign territory, a resentful subject. And a resentful subject sooner or later rebels, and its rebellion often takes the form of disease. Suppression of emotion. The tyrannical mind despises emotions. They are chaotic, unpredictable, inefficient. They don't fit into its ordered plans, and therefore it suppresses them. Sadness is labeled as weakness, anger as dangerous, fear as irrational. When these emotional energies arise from the heart of the kingdom, the mind builds dams of logic and distraction to prevent their flow. But emotional energy cannot be destroyed. Suppressed energy turns into a subterranean pressure that will eventually find an outlet. Often, that outlet is the body. Unexpressed anger can turn into inflammation. Uncried sadness can manifest as chronic heaviness and fatigue. Unconfronted fear can translate into paralyzing muscle tension. Paralysis by analysis. The architect, in his obsession with the perfect plan, with controlling all variables, often gets lost in a labyrinth of his own creation. It is paralysis by analysis. He spends weeks, months, sometimes years, weighing every pro and con, imagining every possible catastrophic scenario, seeking absolute certainty in a universe that is inherently uncertain. This state of mental rumination is one of the most toxic for biology. It keeps the nervous system in a constant state of alert, releasing cortisol as if the threat were real. And what's worse, it prevents action, which is the only way to dissolve uncertainty. Addiction to the problem. Finally, the rational mind is, in its essence, a problem-solving machine. And it is so good at its job that, when there is no real problem to solve, it often invents one. A mind that has not been put in the service of a higher purpose becomes addicted to worry. It worries about the future. It laments the past. It analyzes the imperfections of the present. This habit of seeking problems gives the ego a sense of importance and control, but it turns the inner kingdom into a state of perpetual war, a war against imaginary enemies, but with very real biochemical consequences. The workshop of the wise. Architect, integrated practices. The conscious sovereign does not seek to dethrone his architect. He recognizes his immense value. His job is to return him to his rightful place, that of a brilliant advisor, but not the sole ruler. The initiate in the art of healing cultivates practices to unify his kingdom. The first and most important is the council meeting. The wise sovereign knows he cannot govern by listening to only one voice. Therefore, he institutes a daily practice of inner listening. Every morning, in the stillness of meditation, he not only observes his thoughts, he invites the other two advisors to the table. He turns to his heart and asks, "Heart, how do you really feel today? What do you need to express?" And he listens, without judgment, to the answer that comes in the form of a feeling. He turns to his gut and asks, "Body, what do you intuit today? What is your visceral wisdom for the day that begins?" And he pays attention to the sensations, the instincts, the no's or yeses that are felt in the center of his being. By giving a voice to these two advisors, he balances the power. The logic of the mind is tempered by the compassion of the heart and the primordial wisdom of the body. The second practice is the decree audit. The sovereign becomes the reviewer of his kingdom's laws. Periodically, he takes his journal and performs an audit of his habitual thoughts and beliefs about his health and well-being. He questions the old laws. Is this law of "in my family we are all sickly" still useful for my kingdom? Or is it creating a prophecy of weakness? Is this decree of "I have to sacrifice my rest for productivity" really wise? Or is it leading my kingdom to exhaustion? And with his sovereign authority, he repeals the obsolete laws and enacts new constitutions, based not on inherited fear, but on the vision of a prosperous and healthy kingdom. The mind is not an enemy. It is a brilliant servant, an architect of unparalleled genius. Its tyranny is only born when it forgets that it is part of a council, when its logic tries to drown out the wisdom of the heart and the intuition of the body. Chapter 2. The second brain, the heart, the emissary of the kingdom. For centuries, Western science has relegated the heart to the function of a simple mechanical pump, an admirable muscle but without intelligence of its own. We have said, "I love you with all my heart," or "my heart is broken." But we have treated these phrases as mere poetic metaphors. Ancestral wisdom, however, has always known the truth. From the ancient Egyptians, who believed the heart was the seat of intelligence and the soul, to Eastern traditions that consider it the center of being, humanity has always intuited that the heart is much more than an organ. Today, cutting-edge science is confirming this millennia-old wisdom. We are discovering that the heart is, in fact, a center of information processing and energy emission of astonishing complexity. It is the great emissary of the kingdom, Its function is not just to pump blood. It is to manage the emotional atmosphere of the entire kingdom and communicate our inner state to the outer world. The science of the feeling brain. Field of neurocardiology has revealed that the human heart possesses its own sophisticated intrinsic nervous system, a neural network of more than 40,000 neurons so complex that it has been justly nicknamed the little brain of the heart. This cardiac brain can think, process information, learn and remember independently of the cranial brain. In fact, the communication between the heart and the brain is a two-way superhighway, but with much more intense traffic in one direction. The heart sends exponentially more signals to the head brain than it receives from it. Your heart is not a simple subject that receives orders from the capital. It is a powerful advisor who is constantly informing and modulating the perception of the mental architect. But the heart's true power does not reside in its ability to process information, but in its ability to transmit it. The heart's electromagnetic field, the atmosphere of the kingdom, the HeartMath Institute, a pioneer in the research of cardiac intelligence, has scientifically demonstrated that the heart generates the most potent and extensive electromagnetic field in the body. It is approximately 60 times greater in electrical amplitude and more than 5,000 times stronger in magnetic power than the field generated by the brain. This field is not confined within your body. It radiates from your heart in all directions, forming a toroidal energy field that extends several meters around you. You are not just inside your body, you are inhabiting an energy field that you yourself generate, and the source of that field is your heart. This is the true atmosphere of your inner kingdom. It is an energetic signature that communicates, non-verbally and at the speed of light, your true inner state to the world around you. And the quality of this atmosphere, the information it transmits, changes drastically with each of your emotions. When you experience contraction emotions, such as frustration, anger, anxiety, or fear, your heart rhythm becomes erratic, irregular, and chaotic. The electromagnetic field you emit is incoherent. It is like a radio station that transmits pure static, a noisy and disordered signal. This incoherent atmosphere is a message of war or danger that is sent to every cell in your body and to every person you interact with. When, on the other hand, you experience expansion emotions, such as appreciation, gratitude, compassion, love, your heart rhythm becomes smooth, ordered and harmonious like a perfect sine wave. The electromagnetic field you emit is coherent. It is a clear, powerful, and perfectly tuned radio signal. This coherent atmosphere is a message of peace and security that is sent to the entire kingdom. The wise sovereign understands that his main work of governance is not to control his thoughts, but to cultivate the coherence of his heart. He knows that the atmosphere of his kingdom determines the health of his subjects, his cells, and the quality of his diplomatic relations, his interactions with others. Coherence and incoherence. The music of health and disease. Imagine that your body is an orchestra of billions of cellular musicians. Your heart's field is the conductor. When the conductor, your heart, emits an incoherent signal of stress and fear, it is as if it were conducting the orchestra with violent, erratic spasms. Each cellular musician receives this chaotic signal. The result is biological dissonance. Systems become unsynchronized. The immune system gets confused, sometimes attacking itself. Repair processes stop. The entire body enters a state of alarm and disorder. This is the music of disease. When the conductor, your heart, emits a coherent signal of love and gratitude, it is as if it were conducting with a smooth, harmonious, and predictable rhythm. Each cellular musician receives this clear signal of security and order. Systems become synchronized. The immune system functions with optimal precision. Repair and regeneration processes are activated. The entire body enters a state of biological symphony. This is the music of healing. The state of your heart is the state of your health. Emotional alchemy is therefore not an optional wellness practice. It is the most important act of biological engineering you can perform. It is the art of consciously learning to conduct the symphony of your own being. The Harmonious Heart Workshop. Integrated practices. The initiate in the secrets of the body understands that he cannot command his heart with the force of logic, in the same way that a wise king does not shout orders at his most valuable emissary. Instead, he learns to dialogue, persuade, and guide his heart toward the state of coherence. His workshop is not a training camp, but a garden of cultivation. The first practice, heart breathing, the bridge to calm. The wise sovereign knows that the most direct bridge to communicate with the heart is the breath. An emotion cannot be forced directly, but it can be invited through rhythmic breathing. The initiate's practice to calm an emotional storm in his kingdom is that of heart-focused breathing. He sits in silence, in a dignified yet relaxed posture. He closes his eyes, and he brings the attention of his mind, which normally resides in the head, and gently lowers it to the center of his chest, to the physical space of his heart. Then, he begins to breathe a little more slowly and deeply than normal. He imagines with a gentle intention that the air does not enter through his nose, but flows directly in and out through his heart. He adopts a balanced rhythm. He inhales for a count of 5. He exhales for a count of 5. There is no effort. It is a serene and constant rhythm. This simple act, maintained for just 3 to 5 minutes, is a powerful signal of security for the system. The rhythmic breathing informs the heart-brain that the threat has passed. The heart rate begins to smooth out, to change from a chaotic pattern to a coherent one. The sovereign has not fought the storm. He has calmed the wind. The second practice, the alchemical evocation of emotion. With the rhythm of coherence established, the sovereign must now choose the music that will play in his kingdom. He knows he cannot think his way to gratitude. He must feel it. His practice is that of deliberate evocation. While maintaining his heart-focused breathing, the initiate becomes an archaeologist of joy. He searches the vast library of his memory for a genuine memory of appreciation, of caring, or of gratitude. It doesn't have to be a monumental event. It can be the feeling of petting his cat, the memory of a loved one's face, the beauty of a sunset that once left him breathless. He does not focus on the story of the memory, but on the feeling. He immerses himself in that moment again and allows the emotion of gratitude or love to blossom in his chest. He feels that warmth, that expansion, that openness. Once the emotion is alive and present, the master alchemist lets go of the story and holds on only to the pure feeling. And he sustains it. He breathes it. He radiates it. He bathes in that elevated frequency. This is not an act of positive thinking. It is an act of biochemical engineering. By sustaining this state, he is ordering his heart to release oxytocin. He is changing his body chemistry, shifting it from that of stress to that of regeneration. And he is emitting a coherent and harmonious signal to every cell in his kingdom. The third practice, the diplomatic mission, projecting coherence. The sovereign does not just use this power for his inner kingdom. He uses it in his relations with other kingdoms. He knows that his heart field is his most powerful emissary, his most effective diplomat. Before a difficult conversation, the master does not prepare his arguments. He prepares his heart. Before entering the meeting, he takes 5 minutes to practice heart-focused breathing and to evoke a feeling of calm or appreciation. He enters the encounter not from a state of defensiveness, but from a center of coherence. He is not trying to manipulate the other. He is changing the atmosphere of the encounter before it begins. He often discovers that the other person, upon sensing his field of coherence, responds in a much calmer and more open way than expected. Upon entering a tense environment, the initiate does not join the chaos. He does not allow the incoherent atmosphere of the room to absorb him. Instead, he anchors himself in his own center. He maintains his rhythmic breathing. He keeps his heart in a state of coherence. He becomes a silent lighthouse of peace in the middle of the storm. Without saying a single word, his simple presence, his coherent field, often begins to influence the collective field, inviting other nervous systems into a state of greater calm. The heart is the sun at the center of your biological solar system. Its light, its heat, its coherence determine the climate of your health and your relationships. You have learned to stop being a victim of your emotional storms and to become the wise meteorologist of your own being. Chapter 3. The third brain, the gut, the guardian of the earth. In our modern, disconnected view of the body, we have relegated the gut to the humble function of a plumbing system, a simple tube for processing food and eliminating waste. But ancestral wisdom, from Chinese medicine to shamanic traditions, has always known that the gut is much more than that. It is our center of power, our root, our connection to the intelligence of the earth. Today, cutting-edge science is validating this ancient wisdom with astonishing clarity. We are discovering that the gut is a center of intelligence so complex and so influential that it has been rightfully nicknamed our second brain. But in many ways, it is the first. In the development of an embryo, the nervous system of the gut forms before the brain in the head. It is our primordial brain, the foundation on which everything else is built. The science of the gut brain within your inner kingdom. The gut is the guardian of the earth. Its function is threefold. It manages the kingdom's resources, nutrition, protects its borders, immunity, and provides the raw, unfiltered intelligence of the earth itself, intuition. The enteric nervous system, the mind in your gut. Along the walls of your gastrointestinal tract, from the esophagus to the end of the colon, extends a vast and complex network of over 500 million neurons. This is more than the number of neurons in your spinal cord or your entire peripheral nervous system. This is the enteric nervous system. This gut brain has the ability to operate completely independently of the brain in your head. It can think, remember, and generate visceral feelings. In fact, the communication superhighway that connects them, the vagus nerve, is a two-way street with overwhelming traffic in one direction. Approximately 90% of the information flows from the gut to the brain, not the other way around. This means that the state of your gut is constantly informing, modulating, and often dictating the state of your mind. Anxiety, depression, brain fog, often they don't originate in the head. They are the echoes of a gut kingdom in imbalance. The microbiome, the inner ecosystem. Inside your gut resides an entire universe, trillions of microorganisms, bacteria, viruses, fungi, that outnumber your own cells by a ratio of 10 to 1. This ecosystem is known as the microbiome. They are not invaders. They are our oldest symbiotic partners. We have co-evolved with them for millions of years. They are the wise gardeners of our inner earth. They digest foods that we cannot, releasing essential vitamins and nutrients. They train our immune system, teaching it to differentiate between friends and enemies. And most astonishingly, they synthesize the vast majority of our body's neurotransmitters. It is estimated that more than 90% of serotonin, the famous happiness molecule, is not produced in the brain but in the gut, by the bacteria that inhabit it. The health of your inner garden directly determines the quality of your brain chemistry. A diverse and flourishing garden, full of beneficial bacteria, produces a chemistry of calm, well-being, and mental clarity. A barren garden or one overrun with weeds, dysbiosis, produces a chemistry of anxiety, depression, and confusion. Your mood, to a great extent, is a reflection of the state of your microbiota, the immune system's headquarters. Finally, the guardian of the earth is also the army general. Approximately 70–80% of our entire immune system resides in the tissue surrounding the gut. This makes sense. The gut is the main border between the external world, what we eat, and our internal world. It is the place where your body must make the most important decision at every instant. Is this a friend, a nutrient, or an enemy, a pathogen? A healthy intestinal lining and a balanced microbiota act as an intelligent barrier, allowing friends to enter and neutralizing enemies. But when this barrier is damaged, what is known as leaky gut, it allows undigested particles and toxins to leak into the bloodstream, activating a massive and chronic immune response. This low-grade inflammation, originating in the gut, is now recognized as the root of a multitude of modern diseases, from allergies and autoimmune diseases to heart conditions and neurodegenerative disorders. The security and stability of your entire kingdom depend on the integrity of its borders, and those borders are in your gut. The wise understand this profound truth. There can be no healthy mind in a sick gut. There can be no peaceful heart in a kingdom whose borders are constantly being invaded. Healing, therefore, does not begin in the head. It begins in the earth. The war against the earth. How we silence the guardian. If the health of our gut is so fundamental to our total well-being, why do most of us live with a compromised digestive system, with an inner kingdom in a state of rebellion? The answer is that unconsciously, we have been waging war against our own guardian. This war is fought on three fronts. The first front, the chemical assault, the modern diet. The modern Western diet is a weapon of mass destruction for our inner ecosystem. Processed sugar and refined flours are the preferred fertilizer of harmful bacteria and yeasts like Candida. By consuming them, we are actively feeding the rebellious tribes in our kingdom, allowing them to grow and displace our beneficial allies, ultra-processed foods, full of additives, preservatives, and emulsifiers, act as a poison to the diversity of our microbiota. And many of these chemicals directly damage the integrity of our intestinal barrier, creating the condition of leaky gut. The lack of fiber in our diet is perhaps the greatest sin. Prebiotic fibers, found in vegetables, fruits, and legumes, are the main food for our good bacteria. A low-fiber diet is a famine for our most important allies. The second front, the psychological assault, chronic stress. The gut-brain connection is a two-way superhighway. Just as an inflamed gut can cause anxiety in the brain, a stressed brain can cause chaos in the gut. When we are in a state of chronic stress, the brain releases cortisol. This stress hormone does several devastating things to our third brain. It reduces blood flow to the digestive system, impairing its function. It alters intestinal motility, which can cause both constipation and diarrhea. It directly damages the intestinal barrier, contributing to leaky gut. And most importantly, it changes the composition of our microbiota. Stress favors the growth of pro-inflammatory bacteria and reduces the population of our beneficial strains. Worry and anxiety are not just mental states. They are a biochemical assault on the foundations of our kingdom. The third front, the pharmaceutical assault, the excessive use of antibiotics. Antibiotics are one of the great miracles of modern medicine, capable of saving lives from serious bacterial infections. But their indiscriminate and excessive use, especially in childhood, has had an unintended consequence. A broad-spectrum antibiotic does not distinguish between good and bad bacteria. It is like dropping an atomic bomb on our inner jungle. It annihilates the invaders, but also the allied tribes that took years to establish themselves. Repeated use of antibiotics without a subsequent strategy to repopulate and heal the microbiota can leave our inner ecosystem decimated, creating fertile ground for chronic dysbiosis. The workshop of the inner gardener, integrated practices. The wise sovereign understands that the health of his kingdom depends on the health of his land. Therefore, he becomes a conscious gardener of his inner ecosystem. His practice is not one of control, but of cultivation. The first practice is the conscious cellular feast. The sovereign does not eat simply to satisfy hunger or pleasure. He eats to inform his microbiota. His diet becomes a celebration of plant diversity. He knows that each type of plant feeds a different tribe of beneficial bacteria. His goal is not restriction, but inclusion. He tries to eat the rainbow, incorporating the widest possible variety of vegetables, fruits, herbs, and spices. He deliberately incorporates prebiotic foods, the favorite food of his allies. Foods like garlic, onion, leeks, asparagus, artichokes, and green bananas. And he repopulates his garden with probiotic foods, those that contain live beneficial bacteria. Natural yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, miso. These are not supplements. They are the introduction of new and wise gardeners to his ecosystem. The second practice is the management of the emotional atmosphere. The sovereign knows that his stress is a poison for his land. Therefore, he uses the tools he has learned to calm the kingdom. He practices diaphragmatic breathing before each meal. This simple act activates the vagus nerve and shifts his system from fight or flight mode to rest and digest mode. This is not a small trick. It is perhaps the most important intervention for healthy digestion. He also practices gratitude. Before eating, he gives thanks for the food. This high-vibration emotion creates a biochemical state of coherence that tells his gut that it is safe to receive and assimilate. And the third practice, the most subtle, is that of trusting the intelligence of the guardian. The sovereign learns to listen to the whispers of his third brain. He pays attention to his gut feelings, that inexplicable sensation in the stomach that tells him that a situation or a person is not right. He knows that this is not an illogical reaction. It is his enteric nervous system, with its vast network of neurons, and its direct connection to the microbiota, processing an immense amount of nonverbal information from the environment and delivering an instant verdict. He learns to honor this primordial wisdom. He becomes an observer of the connection between his food, his mood, and his mental clarity. He keeps a food and feeling journal. He notes what he eats and how he feels 1 or 2 hours later. Through this self-observation, he discovers his personal food sensitivities and learns which fuel optimizes his kingdom and which inflames it. Your gut is not a plumbing system. It is the foundation of your being. It is the land from which you extract your resources, the border that protects you, and the oracle that whispers the raw, unadorned truth to you. By becoming the guardian of this guardian, by nurturing your inner garden, you are not just healing your digestion. You are healing your mind. You are healing your emotions. You are laying the foundation for a unified, resilient, and prosperous kingdom. Chapter 4. Pacifying the Architect, Healing the Mind. The rational mind, the first brain, is a tool of astonishing power. It is the strategist who analyzes, plans, and solves problems. But in our modern world, we have overloaded this architect. We have turned him into the sole ruler, demanding that he control every variable, anticipate every danger, and manage every detail of the kingdom. And the result is an exhausted, anxious, and paranoid architect, an overloaded strategist. This hyperactive mind lives in a state of chronic fight or flight. It is constantly scanning the horizon for threats, replaying past mistakes, and worrying about future catastrophes. This state is not just mental. It is biochemical. It floods our kingdom with a constant drip of cortisol, the stress hormone which, as we already know, suppresses the immune system, increases inflammation, and deactivates our body's healing and regeneration programs. A stressed architect is a tyrant who leads his own kingdom to ruin. Therefore, the first and most fundamental discipline of the wise sovereign is to learn to calm his strategist. It is to invite him to step down from the throne of absolute control and to take his place as a valuable advisor in a unified council. This is the art of pacification, the first protocol, the art of the ceasefire. The sovereign does not fight the architect's thoughts. He knows that fighting a thought is like trying to put out a fire by fanning it. It only fuels it. Struggle is the energy of the mind, and you cannot defeat the mind by using its own weapons. Instead, he calls for a ceasefire. His practice is that of embodied presence. It is the art of pulling the architect out of his abstract blueprints and anchoring him in the tangible reality of the present moment. The initiate in this art understands that the anxious mind always lives in time. In the past or in the future, the only antidote to the poison of time is the elixir of the now. To do this, he uses the simplest and at the same time most profound tools. The breath anchor. The sovereign's first act to calm his architect is to gently guide him toward the breath. Not as an exercise in mind control, but as an invitation to stillness. The initiate sits in silence. He closes his eyes, and instead of fighting the whirlwind of thoughts, he simply brings his attention to the physical sensation of the air entering and leaving his body. He feels the air brushing his nostrils. He feels the gentle expansion of his abdomen. He doesn't try to stop the thoughts. He simply gives them a new point of focus, an anchor in the reality of the now. Every time the architect's mind, out of habit, escapes into a worry, the sovereign, with infinite patience, accompanies it back to the breath. This act, repeated over and over, is a training. It is teaching the architect that the present moment is a safe place, that he doesn't need to be constantly patrolling the borders of the future. The body scan. To deepen the anchoring, the sovereign invites the architect on a tour of the physical kingdom. In his meditation, he slowly brings his attention through his body, from his toes to the crown of his head. He doesn't try to change anything. He simply feels. He feels the contact of his feet with the ground. He feels the temperature of his skin. He feels the tension in his shoulders. This act of anchoring in physical sensation is the most potent antidote to the poison of anxious, abstract thought. It takes the mind out of the world of stories and brings it into the world of direct experience. And in the direct experience of the now, most of the problems the mind projects simply do not exist. The observation of thoughts as clouds. Once a certain calm has been established, the sovereign practices the art of de-identification. He sits on the throne of his consciousness, and observes the architect's thoughts not as his thoughts, not as the truth, but as impersonal mental events. Like clouds crossing the sky, he sees the cloud of worry about money pass. He observes it. He does not get on it. He simply lets it pass. Then he sees the cloud of self-judgment pass. He observes it, and he lets it pass. In doing this, he realizes the most liberating truth. He is not the clouds. He is the sky. He is the silent, conscious space in which all thoughts appear and disappear. This de-identification is the end of tyranny. Thoughts are no longer his masters. They become simple suggestions that he, as sovereign, can choose to accept or ignore. As a sovereign, you understand that beliefs are the constitution of your inner kingdom. They are the supreme laws that dictate the culture, behavior, and well-being of every one of your cellular subjects. A constitution based on fear, limitation, and unworthiness can only produce a kingdom of disease and conflict. The wise sovereign is not content with managing the daily chaos that bad laws produce. He goes to the root. He undertakes the sacred task of constitutional reform. This is the workshop for healing the mind. The second protocol, the archaeology of the broken law. The first act of the wise legislator is to identify the law that is causing the greatest harm. We cannot repeal a law that we have not read. This is the practice of the archaeology of belief. The initiate becomes a detective of his own psyche, a historian who seeks the origin of the laws that govern him. He takes his journal, which is his royal archive, and chooses an area of his kingdom that is in a state of rebellion or suffering. A chronic physical ailment, a pattern of conflicting relationships, a persistent financial scarcity. And with that area in mind, he begins the excavation. He uses the wise technique as his shovel and brush. Let's imagine the suffering is social anxiety. The initiate asks himself, why do I feel this anxiety in social situations? The first superficial answer might be, because I'm afraid of saying something stupid. And he digs deeper. And why am I afraid of saying something stupid? The answer might be, because I'm afraid of others judging and rejecting me. He digs even deeper. And why does judgment and rejection terrify me so much? The answer often gets to the foundation, the fundamental law written in childhood. Because I learned that to be loved, I had to be perfect and people-pleasing. The initiate has found the broken law, the law of conditional approval. This is the law that has been governing his social kingdom in secret. The third protocol, the deconstruction of tyranny. Once the law has been unearthed and exposed to the light of consciousness, the sovereign puts it on trial. He deconstructs it. He knows that a belief is supported by three pillars, a story, an emotion, and an identity. To dissolve the law, he must dismantle these three pillars, deconstruct the story. He asks himself, is this law an absolute, immutable truth? Or is it simply a story I learned in my family, in my tribe, to survive in that specific environment? Is it possible that, outside of that old context, this law is no longer valid? By recognizing it as a story, not as the truth, he takes away its dogmatic power. Deconstruct the emotion. He feels the emotion associated with the law in his body, the fear of rejection. But instead of being hijacked by it, he observes it like a scientist. He knows that this emotion is simply a biochemical cocktail, a habit of his nervous system. It is not an oracle of truth. Deconstruct the identity. He realizes that he has fused his self with this law. I am a shy person. I am someone who needs approval. And he practices de-identification. He declares, I am not this law. I am the consciousness that observes this law. I am the sovereign who has the power to change it. The fourth protocol, the promulgation of the new law. The sovereign does not leave a power vacuum. On the clean ground of the old belief, he promulgates a new constitution. This is the art of sovereign affirmation. The initiate does not create a simple positive phrase. He designs a new fundamental law for his kingdom that is clear, powerful, and resonates with the truth of his soul. If the old law was that of conditional approval, the new law could be, my worth is intrinsic and unconditional. I express myself with authenticity and confidence, knowing that my being is my only and true source of security. Once the new law has been written, it must be promulgated. The sovereign does not keep it in a drawer. He declares it to his kingdom. He uses the mirror ritual. He stands in front of his own reflection, not as a supplicant but as a king addressing his people. He looks into his own eyes and, with a serene authority, reads the new law aloud. He does this every day, not to convince himself, but to remind every cell in his kingdom what the new constitution is under which they now operate. And finally, the wise sovereign knows that a law only becomes real when it is lived. He practices embodiment. Throughout his day, he makes small decisions and performs small actions that are in perfect alignment with his new law. Each of these actions is a vote. It is the ratification of the new constitution in the world of matter. Pacifying the architect is not an act of repression, but of illumination. It is the process of transforming an anxious and overloaded strategist into a wise advisor. It is the art of taking the immense capacity of the mind to create blueprints and ensuring that the blueprints it designs are those of a kingdom of peace, health, and harmony. Chapter 5. Harmonizing the Emissary, Healing the Emotion. The second brain, the heart, is the center of our emotional intelligence. It is the generator of our kingdom's atmosphere. Its emotions are the energetic messages that send a constant signal to every cell in our body and to the outside world. If the mind writes the law, the heart is what colors it with the energy that gives it power. The chained emissary, suppression and unconscious expression. Most of us have been trained to have a dysfunctional relationship with our emotions. We live under the spell of two great illusions that chain our emissary. The first is the illusion of suppression. Our culture often labels certain emotions as negative or bad. We are taught to repress anger, to hide sadness, to be ashamed of fear. We believe that if we ignore these emotions, they will disappear. But an emotion is energy, and energy cannot be destroyed. Suppressed energy does not disappear. It becomes a subterranean pressure, a knot in the throat, a tightness in the chest. It is stored in the tissues of our body, creating energetic blockages that, over time, can manifest as physical symptoms. Suppression is the act of chaining our emissary in a dungeon. The second illusion is that of unconscious expression. It is the belief that we must vent, that we must air our anger or frustration unfiltered. Although this can provide momentary cathartic relief, it is often counterproductive. The reactive unconscious expression of an emotion simply reinforces the neural circuit of that emotion. Every time you explode with anger, you are training your brain to be more efficient at producing anger the next time. It's as if the emissary, instead of being chained, were a drunken rebel who wreaks havoc on the kingdom without any direction. The wise sovereign does not chain or permit chaos. He learns to channel. He understands that every emotion is a messenger that brings valuable information, and that his job is to listen to the message and then direct the messenger's energy in a conscious and constructive way. The science of the stormy kingdom. The incoherent heart. To understand how to heal our emotions, we must first understand how they make us sick. The state of a heart governed by fear, anger, or frustration is what the HeartMath Institute calls a state of incoherence. As we already know, your heart emits a powerful electromagnetic field. Heart rate variability, HRV, is a measure of the natural variations in time between each heartbeat. A healthy and resilient nervous system has a high HRV. When you experience contraction emotions such as stress, your HRV pattern becomes chaotic, irregular, disordered. It's like a seismograph recording an earthquake. This incoherent signal is an alarm message, a siren that sounds throughout your kingdom. Biochemically, this signal activates the sympathetic nervous system and orders the adrenal glands to flood the body with stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones are useful in a real emergency, but when released chronically, they are a poison. Cortisol suppresses the immune system, increases inflammation, interferes with digestion, damages neurons in the hippocampus, affecting memory, and promotes visceral fat storage. Neurologically, the incoherent signal from the heart sends a panic message to the brain in the head. This effectively disconnects the prefrontal cortex, our wise and logical architect, and leaves us at the mercy of the amygdala, our reptilian and reactive brain. In a state of incoherence, we literally cannot think clearly. Energetically, the electromagnetic field we emit is chaotic and dissonant. This is the energy that our cells and the people around us perceive. It is a vibration of conflict and danger. Living in a state of emotional incoherence is living in a self-induced biochemical and energetic storm. It is the root cause of an immense amount of chronic diseases and emotional suffering. The link with the vagus nerve. This connection between the heart and the rest of the body is mediated, in large part, by the vagus nerve. As we have seen, it is the superhighway of the parasympathetic system, the brake of our nervous system. The health of this nerve, measured by vagal tone, is one of the best indicators of our emotional and physical resilience. A high vagal tone means that our brake works well. We can move from a state of stress to one of calm with ease. A low vagal tone means that our brake is worn out. Once we hit the stress accelerator, we get stuck there, unable to return to calm. And here's the key. The rhythm of our heart and our breath are the main regulators of our vagal tone. A state of heart coherence, with its smooth and harmonious rhythm, tones the vagus nerve. It's like taking your car's brake to the shop for regular maintenance. Therefore, the work of healing our emotions is not a purely psychological activity. It is an act of retraining our nervous system through the heart. It is the art of learning to move at will, from incoherence to coherence. We know that an incoherent heart, governed by contraction emotions, is the source of dissonance that makes our body sick and sabotages our peace. The wise sovereign, upon receiving this knowledge, does not declare war on his emissary. He does not try to silence the heart. He knows that would be an act of tyranny that would only generate more rebellion. Instead, with infinite patience, he opens a workshop of diplomacy. He begins the art of emotional persuasion, the re-education of his heart. The first practice, the alchemy of transmutation. The sovereign's first act is not to think positive. It is to honor the truth of what is felt in the moment. He knows that contraction emotions, anger, fear, sadness, are not enemies. They are messengers. They are loyal advisors who bring him news, often shouting about a law of his kingdom that is being violated, or about a need that is not being met. Suppressing these messengers is an act of madness. The sovereign, instead, invites them to his throne room for an audience. This is the practice of emotional alchemy. Sovereign recognition. When an emotion like anger arises in the kingdom, the sovereign is not hijacked by it. He does not become the anger. He sits on his throne of consciousness and recognizes it. "Ah," he says inwardly, "the advisor of anger has arrived. He has an urgent message for me." This simple act of naming and recognizing creates a space. You are no longer the emotion. You are the consciousness that is aware of the emotion. Bodily listening. The sovereign knows that anger does not speak with words, but with sensations. Therefore, he brings his attention to his body. Where do I feel this energy of anger? Is it a fire in my chest? A tension in my jaw? He investigates it with the curiosity of a scientist. By doing this, he detaches from the story the mind is weaving around the anger. This is so unfair, and connects with the pure energy of the sensation. The alchemical question. Once this compassionate connection is established, the sovereign asks the emotion, the question that changes everything. What are you trying to protect? What boundary has been crossed? What do you need me to do? He listens for the answer, which often arrives not as a thought, but as an inner knowing. Perhaps the anger is revealing that he needs to set a clear boundary in a relationship, or that he needs to defend his own truth. Transmutation. Once the message has been received and honored, the sovereign thanks the messenger, and now he can transmute its energy. He knows that the energy of anger is simply fire, and fire can be used to destroy or to create. The sovereign consciously chooses to take that same energy of anger and channel it into constructive action. He uses that fire to have the difficult conversation he has been avoiding, or to propel a creative project. He has not suppressed the anger. He has transmuted its lead into the gold of passionate action. The second practice, the deliberate cultivation of coherence. The sovereign does not just manage crises, he proactively cultivates peace. He knows that the state of heart coherence is the optimal climate for the prosperity and health of his kingdom. Therefore, he dedicates time each day to the deliberate practice of harmonization. His main tool is heart-focused breathing. The initiate sits in silence, in a dignified yet relaxed posture. He closes his eyes, and he brings the attention of his mind, which normally resides in the head, and gently lowers it to the center of his chest, to the physical space of his heart. Then, he begins to breathe a little more slowly and deeply than normal. He imagines with a gentle intention that the air does not enter through his nose but flows directly in and out through his heart. He adopts a balanced rhythm. He inhales for a count of 5. He exhales for a count of 5. There is no effort. It is a serene and constant rhythm. This simple act, maintained for just 3 to 5 minutes, is a powerful signal of security for the system. The rhythmic breathing informs the heart-brain that the threat has passed. The heart rate begins to smooth out, to change from a chaotic pattern to a coherent one. The sovereign has not fought the storm. He has calmed the wind. Once the rhythm of coherence has been established, the sovereign must now choose the music that will play in his kingdom. He knows he cannot think his way to gratitude. He must feel it. His practice is that of deliberate evocation. While maintaining his heart-focused breathing, the initiate becomes an archaeologist of joy. He searches the vast library of his memory for a genuine memory of appreciation, of caring, or of gratitude. It doesn't have to be a monumental event. It can be the feeling of petting his cat, the memory of a loved one's face, the beauty of a sunset that once left him breathless. He does not focus on the story of the memory, but on the sensation. He immerses himself in that moment again and allows the emotion of gratitude or love to blossom in his chest. He feels that warmth, that expansion, that openness. Once the emotion is alive and present, the master alchemist lets go of the story and holds on only to the pure feeling. And he sustains it. He breathes it. He radiates it. He bathes in that elevated frequency. This is not an act of positive thinking. It is an act of biochemical engineering. By sustaining this state, he is ordering his heart to release oxytocin. He is changing his body chemistry, shifting it from that of stress to that of regeneration. And he is emitting a coherent and harmonious signal to every cell in his kingdom. The third practice, the diplomatic mission, projecting coherence. The sovereign does not just use this power for his inner kingdom. He uses it in his relations with other kingdoms. He knows that his heart field is his most powerful emissary, his most effective diplomat. Before a difficult conversation, the master does not prepare his arguments. He prepares his heart. Before entering the meeting, he takes 5 minutes to practice heart-focused breathing and to evoke a feeling of calm or appreciation. He enters the encounter not from a state of defensiveness, but from a center of coherence. He is not trying to manipulate the other. He is changing the atmosphere of the encounter before it begins. He often discovers that the other person, upon sensing his field of coherence, responds in a much calmer and more open way than expected. Upon entering a tense environment, the initiate does not join the chaos. He does not allow the incoherent atmosphere of the room to absorb him. Instead, he anchors himself in his own center. He maintains his rhythmic breathing. He keeps his heart in a state of coherence. He becomes a silent lighthouse of peace in the middle of the storm. Without saying a single word, his simple presence, his coherent field, often begins to influence the collective field, inviting other nervous systems into a state of greater calm. The heart is the sun at the center of your biological solar system. Its light, its heat, its coherence determine the climate of your health and your relationships. You have learned to stop being a victim of your emotional storms and to become the wise meteorologist of your own being. Chapter 6. Nurturing the Earth, Healing the Gut in our modern, disconnected view of the body. We have relegated the gut to the humble function of a plumbing system, a simple tube for processing food and eliminating waste. But ancestral wisdom, from Chinese medicine to shamanic traditions, has always known that the gut is much more than that. It is our center of power, our root, our connection to the intelligence of the earth. Today, cutting-edge science is validating this ancient wisdom with astonishing clarity. We are discovering that the gut is a center of intelligence so complex and so influential that it has been rightfully nicknamed our second brain. But in many ways, it is the first. In the development of an embryo, the nervous system of the gut forms before the brain in the head. It is our primordial brain, the foundation on which everything else is built. The science of the gut-brain within your inner kingdom. The gut is the guardian of the earth. Its function is threefold. It manages the kingdom's resources, nutrition, protects its borders, immunity, and provides the raw, unfiltered intelligence of the earth itself, intuition. The enteric nervous system, the mind in your gut. Along the walls of your gastrointestinal tract, from the esophagus to the end of the colon, extends a vast and complex network of over 500 million neurons. This is more than the number of neurons in your spinal cord or your entire peripheral nervous system. This is the enteric nervous system. This gut brain has the ability to operate completely independently of the brain in your head. It can learn, remember, and generate visceral feelings. In fact, the communication superhighway that connects them, the vagus nerve, is a two-way street with overwhelming traffic in one direction. Approximately 90% of the information flows from the gut to the brain, not the other way around. This means that the state of your gut is constantly informing, modulating, and often dictating the state of your mind. Anxiety, depression, brain fog. Often, they don't originate in the head. They are the echoes of a gut kingdom in imbalance. The microbiome, the inner ecosystem. Inside your gut resides an entire universe. Trillions of microorganisms, bacteria, viruses, fungi, that outnumber your own cells by a ratio of 10 to 1. This ecosystem is known as the microbiome. They are not invaders. They are our oldest symbiotic partners. We have co-evolved with them for millions of years. They are the wise gardeners of our inner earth. They digest foods that we cannot, releasing essential vitamins and nutrients. They train our immune system, teaching it to differentiate between friends and enemies, and most astonishingly, they synthesize the vast majority of our body's neurotransmitters. It is estimated that more than 90% of serotonin, the famous happiness molecule, is not produced in the brain but in the gut, by the bacteria that inhabit it. The health of your inner garden directly determines the quality of your brain chemistry. A diverse and flourishing garden, full of beneficial bacteria, produces a chemistry of calm, well-being, and mental clarity. A barren garden, or one overrun with weeds, dysbiosis, produces a chemistry of anxiety, depression, and confusion. Your mood, to a great extent, is a reflection of the state of your microbiota, the immune system's headquarters. Finally, the guardian of the earth is also the army general. Approximately 70–80% of our entire immune system resides in the tissue surrounding the gut. This makes sense. The gut is the main border between the external world, what we eat, and our internal world. It is the place where your body must make the most important decision at every instant. Is this a friend, a nutrient, or an enemy, a pathogen? A healthy intestinal lining and a balanced microbiota act as an intelligent barrier, allowing friends to enter and neutralizing enemies. But when this barrier is damaged, what is known as leaky gut, it allows undigested particles and toxins to leak into the bloodstream, activating a massive and chronic immune response. This low-grade inflammation, originating in the gut, is now recognized as the root of a multitude of modern diseases, from allergies and autoimmune diseases to heart conditions and neurodegenerative disorders. The security and stability of your entire kingdom depend on the integrity of its borders, and those borders are in your gut. The wise sovereign understands this profound truth. There can be no healthy mind in a sick gut. There can be no peaceful heart in a kingdom whose borders are constantly being invaded. Healing, therefore, does not begin in the head. It begins in the earth, the war against the earth, how we silence the guardian. If the health of our gut is so fundamental to our total well-being, why do most of us live with a compromised digestive system, with an inner kingdom in a state of rebellion? The answer is that unconsciously, we have been waging war against our own guardian. This war is fought on three fronts. The first front, the chemical assault, the modern diet. The modern Western diet is a weapon of mass destruction for our inner ecosystem. Processed sugar and refined flours are the preferred fertilizer of harmful bacteria and yeasts like Candida. By consuming them, we are actively feeding the rebellious tribes in our kingdom, allowing them to grow and displace our beneficial allies. Ultra-processed foods, full of additives, preservatives, and emulsifiers, act as a poison to the diversity of our microbiota. And many of these chemicals directly damage the integrity of our intestinal barrier, creating the condition of leaky gut. The lack of fiber in our diet is perhaps the greatest sin. Prebiotic fibers, which are found in vegetables, fruits, and legumes, are the main food for our good bacteria. Their low-fiber diet is a famine for our most important allies. The second front, the psychological assault, chronic stress. The gut-brain connection is a two-way superhighway. Just as an inflamed gut can cause anxiety in the brain, a stressed brain can cause chaos in the gut. When we are in a state of chronic stress, the brain releases cortisol. This stress hormone does several devastating things to our third brain. It reduces blood flow to the digestive system, impairing its function. It alters intestinal motility, which can cause both constipation and diarrhea. It directly damages the intestinal barrier, contributing to leaky gut, and most importantly, it changes the composition of our microbiota. Stress favors the growth of pro-inflammatory bacteria and reduces the population of our beneficial strains. Worry and anxiety are not just mental states, they are a biochemical assault on the foundations of our kingdom. The first practice, the feast of life, nourishing the garden. The gardener understands that his garden needs the right food. He transforms his diet from an act of unconscious consumption to an act of deliberate cultivation. The great purge, the weeding. The first act of the gardener is to stop fertilizing the weeds. The initiate begins by systematically reducing or eliminating the three great poisons of the modern diet: processed sugar, which feeds harmful bacteria; industrial vegetable oils, sunflower, soy, etc., which promote inflammation; and the chemical additives of ultra-processed foods, which confuse and overload the system. This is not an act of restriction, but of liberation. The sowing of diversity, the prebiotic feast. The master gardener knows that a healthy ecosystem is a diverse ecosystem. His main practice is to eat the rainbow. He makes sure that his plate is full of an immense variety of plants. Each color, each type of vegetable, fruit, legume, or whole grain feeds a different tribe of beneficial bacteria. The fiber in these foods is not filler. It is the manna that his allies feed on, the repopulation, the probiotic army. To accelerate the restoration of balance, the initiate reintroduces tribes of beneficial bacteria into his kingdom. He incorporates live fermented foods into his diet, the oldest gut medicine of humanity. Kefir, natural yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, miso. These are not supplements. They are the introduction of new and wise gardeners to his ecosystem. The second practice, the peace treaty, calming the earth. The gardener knows that a stressed land, flooded by the hormones of drought and war, cannot flourish no matter how good the seed. The sovereign must sign a peace treaty with his guardian. The digestion breath. The simplest and most profound practice is the ceasefire before eating. Before each meal, the initiate takes 2 minutes. He sits down. He closes his eyes, and he takes several slow, deep breaths, feeling his abdomen expand. This simple act activates his vagus nerve and shifts his nervous system from fight or flight mode to rest and digest mode. This is not a small trick. It is, perhaps, the most important intervention for healthy digestion. Mindful eating. The master transforms the act of eating into a meditation. He turns off screens, he sits, and he pays attention. He observes the colors, the smells, the textures of his food. He chews slowly, he savors. This act of presence not only increases pleasure, it sends a powerful signal of calm and coherence to his intestinal brain, optimizing the entire digestive process. The third practice, listening to the wisdom of the earth. Finally, the sovereign learns to trust the intelligence of his guardian. He stops blindly following external dietary dogmas and learns to listen to the wisdom of his own land, of his own biology. The practice is that of intuitive self-observation. The initiate, after cleansing his palate of the most disruptive processed foods, begins a dialogue with his body. He reintroduces foods one by one and listens. He keeps a food and sensation journal. He not only notes what he eats, but how he feels an hour or two later, and the next day. Did this food give me stable, clear energy? Or did it leave me bloated, tired, with a cloudy mind? Through this attentive listening, he becomes his own nutritionist. He discovers his personal food sensitivities and learns which fuel optimizes his kingdom and which inflames it. Your gut is not a plumbing system. It is the foundation of your being. It is the land from which you extract your resources, the border that protects you, and the oracle that whispers the raw, unadorned truth to you. By becoming the guardian of this guardian, by nurturing your inner garden, you are not just healing your digestion. You are healing your mind. You are healing your emotions. You are laying the foundation for a unified, resilient, and prosperous kingdom. Chapter 7. Decreeing calm, healing anxiety and stress. Anxiety and its parent, chronic stress, are not simple states of mind. They are a silent epidemic that corrodes the health of our body and the peace of our soul. To heal them, we must first understand them, not as enemies to be defeated, but as a symptom. As the cry of a kingdom in a state of civil war, anxiety, from the perspective of the three brains, is not a mental illness. It is a state of deep incoherence. It is the result of a governing council in which the three great advisors, the mind, the heart, and the gut, are sending contradictory and panicked signals. To understand how to heal anxiety, we must first dissect this storm, to understand how each of our centers of intelligence contributes to creating it. The inner civil war, how the three brains create anxiety. The architect of catastrophe, the role of the mind. The storm almost always begins in the capital, in the tower of the royal architect. The rational mind has a superpower, the ability to project into the future. It is a tool designed for planning and anticipation. But in an unhealed state, this superpower becomes a curse. The anxious architect becomes an architect of catastrophe. He uses his brilliant capacity for imagination not to design a desired future, but to build with exquisite detail all the worst possible scenarios. His motto is what if? What if I lose my job? What if this disease is serious? What if my partner leaves me? Each of these questions is a blueprint. The mind does not stop at the question. It builds an entire edifice around it. It rehearses the conversation of being fired, feels the pain of the illness, visualizes the loneliness. This process of preoccupation is, in essence, an act of negative prayer. The mind is using its divine faculties to rehearse failure. The architect believes this process of worrying is useful. He tells himself he is being realistic or preparing for the worst. But this is one of the ego's great lies. Worrying is not preparing. Preparation is a calm, focused action in the present to mitigate a future risk. Worrying is a mental loop of suffering that does not produce any constructive action. Biochemically, each of these catastrophic thoughts is a command to the body. The brain does not distinguish between a real threat and a vividly imagined one. When you imagine losing your job, your nervous system reacts as if you have already lost it, and it begins to release stress hormones. The mind, the architect, has drafted the decree of emergency. The emissary of panic, the role of the heart. The second brain, the heart, receives these decrees from the mind. The heart is the great emotional amplifier. It does not question the architect's blueprints. It simply converts them into a feeling and transmits them to the entire kingdom with immense power. When the mind thinks I am in danger, the heart feels the danger, and its rhythm in response becomes chaotic and incoherent. It begins to beat faster, irregularly. This is the birth of the palpitations and chest tightness that people with anxiety know so well. And as we already know, this incoherent heart rate generates a chaotic electromagnetic field. The kingdom's emissary is no longer transmitting a signal of peace and harmony. It is emitting a deafening alarm siren, a panic message that propagates at the speed of light to each of the trillions of cells in the body. This signal from the heart does two things. It reinforces the message to the brain. The incoherent signal travels upward, through the vagus nerve to the brain, and tells the architect, I confirm, there is a real danger, keep worrying. This creates a vicious feedback loop, where the mind frightens the heart and the heart frightens the mind. It prepares the body for battle. The signal orders the rest of the body to prepare for an imminent war. Cortisol and adrenaline spike. Blood is diverted from internal organs to the extremities. Breathing becomes shallow and rapid. Muscles tense, ready to attack or flee from an enemy that only exists in the architect's imagination. The cornered guardian, the role of the gut. Finally, this cascade of panic signals reaches the foundations of the kingdom, the third brain. The gut, as guardian of the earth, has one priority above all others: survival. When it receives the message of imminent war, both biochemically, cortisol, and energetically, the heart's incoherent field, it reacts drastically. It closes the borders. Its first action is to divert all energy from digestion, which is a process of peace and growth. It's not time to digest lunch if a tiger is about to attack you. The result is slow digestion, bloating, gas. It alters the ecosystem. The stressful gut environment becomes hostile to our beneficial bacteria and a paradise for opportunistic and harmful ones. The microbiota is altered, which leads to a lower production of serotonin, the molecule of calm, and a greater production of inflammatory molecules. It sends panic reinforcements, and here the loop closes. An inflamed and dysbiotic gut, through its own neural network and the vagus nerve, sends its own alarm signals to the brain. It says, the situation down here in the earth is a disaster. There's a rebellion. There's inflammation. There's danger. This is the vicious cycle of chronic anxiety. The mind imagines a danger. The heart feels and amplifies it. The gut embodies it and sends confirmation. Each brain, in its attempt to protect the kingdom, unwittingly reinforces the panic state of the other two. It is a perfect civil war, a storm that feeds itself. We have dissected the storm. We have seen how the civil war between our three brains, the mind that projects fear, the heart that amplifies it, and the gut that embodies it, creates the chronic state of anxiety. We have understood the why of our suffering, but the wise sovereign is not content with understanding the war. His job is to negotiate peace. In the second part of this workshop, we will learn to sign a treaty of inner peace. We will explore the practical protocols to unify our council and decree with sovereign authority the state of calm. The first protocol, signing the armistice, breath as an ambassador. The sovereign knows that peace cannot be negotiated in the midst of a pitched battle. The first act of governance is to declare a ceasefire. And the only ambassador that the three brains respect, the only one who can travel freely between the capital, the heart, and the earth, is the breath. The initiate in the art of healing uses a specific breathing technique, known as 4-7-8 breathing, to activate the vagus nerve almost instantly and force a shift from war mode to peace mode. The practice is simple and profound. The sovereign sits or lies down. He exhales all the air from his lungs with a sigh. Then, he inhales silently through his nose while counting to 4. He holds his breath while counting to 7. And finally, he exhales audibly and completely through his mouth while counting to 8. He repeats this cycle 3 or 4 times. This is not a simple relaxation technique. It is an act of neurological engineering. The breath hold increases carbon dioxide levels, which calms the brain's respiratory center, and the prolonged exhale is the most powerful signal there is to stimulate the vagus nerve, the master switch of calm. This is the armistice. The second protocol, re-educating the architect, the deconstruction of catastrophe. With the temporary calm established, the sovereign meets with his architect, not to punish him for his alarmism, but to re-educate him, to teach him to use his brilliant power of projection in a wiser way. His practice is that of the deconstruction journal. The initiate takes the main worry, the catastrophic story that his architect has been projecting, and he submits it to the light of compassionate reason. He writes it down. He writes the anxious thought in its purest form. I'm afraid of failing this presentation, and that everyone will think I'm incompetent. He questions it then. He becomes a Socratic lawyer. What is the real evidence that I'm going to fail? Have I had successes in the past? What is the worst-case scenario, realistically? Will I die, or will I just feel embarrassed for a while? What resources do I have to handle that worst-case scenario if it were to happen? What is an alternative, more powerful, and equally possible story I could tell myself about this presentation? He reframes it. Finally, he rewrites the decree. I am well prepared for this presentation. It is an opportunity to share my value. I will focus on serving my audience, not on seeking their approval. I trust in my ability to handle any outcome with grace. The sovereign also teaches the architect a new game, the gratitude hunt. He commands him that, for every worrying thought he generates, he must find and name 3 things in the present moment for which he feels genuine gratitude. This practice retrains the perception filter, forcing the mind to look for evidence of safety instead of evidence of danger. The third protocol, harmonizing the emissary, heart coherence. Now, the sovereign turns to his emissary, the heart, to teach it to play the music of peace and to transmit it throughout the kingdom. The practice is that of heart coherence, which we have already explored and which is the central tool for healing anxiety. The master sits, breathes rhythmically through his heart, and evokes a feeling of appreciation. He feels that warmth, that expansion. He knows that he is not thinking positive. He is actively changing the electromagnetic signal of his kingdom. He is replacing the siren of panic with the symphony of calm. An advanced practice that the initiate uses is that of projecting coherence. While maintaining his state of coherence, he visualizes that harmonious energy as a warm light emanating from his heart and enveloping the situation or person, causing him anxiety. He is not trying to change the other. He is changing his own energetic response to the situation, dissolving the burden of fear from within. The fourth protocol, nurturing the earth, the diet of calm. Finally, the sovereign attends to his guardian, the gut, knowing that a peaceful land promotes a peaceful mind. He adopts a diet of calm. He reduces or eliminates stimulants that keep the nervous system on alert, such as excessive caffeine and refined sugar. He increases the intake of nutrients that are the building blocks for calm neurotransmitters. Foods rich in magnesium, leafy greens, nuts, seeds as in tryptophan, turkey eggs, bananas, a precursor to serotonin, and in omega-3 fats. He cultivates his inner garden with probiotic foods, knowing that a healthy, diverse microbiota is a factory of happiness and tranquility. Anxiety is not a life sentence. It is not who you are, it is a signal. It is the cry of a divided kingdom that longs for unification and the leadership of its sovereign. By learning to calm your architect with presence, to harmonize your emissary with gratitude, and to nurture your guardian with conscious food, you stop being the victim of the storm. You become the wise meteorologist who, with his own consciousness, creates an inner climate of unshakable peace. Chapter 8. The Flame of Vitality, Healing Pain and Inflammation. Acute inflammation is one of the most miraculous and wise responses of our body. It is the fire that purifies, the emergency response that sends the healers of the immune system to a wounded area to clear the rubble and begin reconstruction. It is a fire that has a purpose, and once its work is done, it goes out. But in modern life, for many of us, that fire never goes out. It turns into a low-grade wildfire, a silent ember that burns under the surface of our biology, day after day, year after year. This chronic inflammation is now recognized by science as the root of almost all degenerative diseases, from arthritis and heart disease to depression and Alzheimer's. And its most common symptom, its most persistent messenger, is chronic pain. Chronic pain is like a fire alarm that has gotten stuck. The original threat, the injury, the infection may have disappeared long ago, but the siren keeps blaring, deafening and debilitating. The problem is no longer the fire. It's the hypersensitive alarm system. To heal pain and inflammation, we must not simply try to silence the alarm with painkillers. We must, as wise sovereigns of our kingdom, understand why it was activated in the first place and address the root cause. And as we have learned, the root cause is often not physical. It is an incoherence in our three-brain governance system. The triad of pain, how the three brains create inflammation. The experience of chronic pain is a perfect conspiracy, a storm created by the dysfunctional interaction between our mind, our heart, and our gut. The architect of danger, the role of the mind. Pain is not a sensation that travels from your body to your brain. It is an opinion that your brain creates about the safety of your body. Pain is a brain's decision. The neuroscience of pain has shown that the experience of pain is 100% a creation of the brain. The brain receives signals from the body's nerves, nociception, but then it must interpret those signals. And its interpretation is massively influenced by our beliefs, our memories and our emotions. If the architect in your mind holds the belief my back is weak and vulnerable, it will interpret even the slightest signal from the nerves in your back as a catastrophic threat and will amplify the pain signal to protect you. If you have a memory of a past injury, the architect can become hypervigilant, creating phantom pain even when there is no new tissue damage. The anxious mind, which we pacified in the previous chapter, is the greatest amplifier of pain. The architect who constantly projects catastrophic scenarios, this pain will never go away as it's going to ruin my life, is, in essence, training the brain to become exquisitely sensitive to pain signals. It's like turning the volume of the fire alarm to the maximum. The fear of pain is often more debilitating than the pain itself. It leads us to avoid movement, which weakens muscles and worsens the situation, creating a vicious cycle of fear, immobility, and more pain. The architect, in his attempt to protect the kingdom, has unwittingly put it under house arrest. The emissary of stress, the role of the heart. The heart, our second brain, receives these blueprints of catastrophe from the architect and responds in the only way it knows how, by generating an alarm signal. The emotional state of fear of pain, of frustration at limitation, creates an incoherent heart rate pattern. As we already know, this is the signature of stress. This incoherent signal from the heart is a war message that is transmitted throughout the kingdom. And in a war, biology has very clear priorities. The body, under the dominance of an incoherent heart, releases a cascade of cortisol. Now, cortisol in short bursts is a powerful anti-inflammatory, but when it is released chronically, as happens in states of persistent stress and pain, something paradoxical and terrible happens. The body's cells become resistant to cortisol. It's as if the subjects of the kingdom get tired of hearing the same alarm every day and start to ignore it. When this happens, the body loses its ability to put out the fire of inflammation. Say a small local inflammation, which should have resolved in a few days, turns into a chronic and systemic wildfire because the main firefighter, cortisol, has lost its effectiveness. The heart, with its stress signal, is pouring gasoline on the fire. The cornered guardian, the role of the gut. Finally, the fire spreads to the foundations of the kingdom. Chronic stress, as we have seen, is devastating to gut health. Cortisol directly damages the intestinal barrier, creating the condition of leaky gut. Imagine that the walls of your kingdom have cracked. Undigested food particles, toxins, and bacterial fragments, like endotoxins called LPS, that should remain inside the gut, now escape into the bloodstream. Your immune system, the army of the kingdom, upon detecting these invaders in a place where they should not be, panics. It launches a massive and systemic attack. It is a war on all borders. This chronic immune activation is the very definition of low-grade systemic inflammation. And this inflammation does not stay in the gut. It travels throughout the body, creating or exacerbating pain in the joints, muscles, and tissues. Furthermore, this inflammation in the body sends alarm signals back to the brain, which increases sensitivity to pain and generates more anxiety. Closing the loop. This is the triad of chronic pain: a mind that perceives a threat, a heart that emits the signal of stress, and a gut that leaks inflammation. It is a perfect conspiracy of the three brains, a civil war that keeps the kingdom in a state of perpetual suffering. The first protocol: rewriting the law of pain, pacifying the architect. The sovereign knows that pain ultimately is an opinion of the brain. To change the experience, he must first change the law that governs it. His first act is to re-educate his architect. The initiate's practice is not to ignore the pain, but to change his relationship with it. He becomes a deconstructor of his own catastrophic beliefs. The Pain Deconstruction Journal. The master takes his journal, and he writes down the stories that his mental architect tells about the pain. My back will never heal. This pain is ruining my life. I can't do anything because of this pain. The sovereign questioning. Then he subjects these laws to a trial. He asks himself, is it 100% certain that my back will never heal, or is that a projection of fear? Was there any moment, however brief, when the pain was less? What was I doing or thinking at that moment? This questioning introduces doubt into the certainty of hopelessness, the visualization of fluidity. The initiate knows that his brain has created a neural signature of pain, a map of limitation. To create a new map, he practices visualization. But he does not visualize fighting the pain. He visualizes its absence. If he has knee pain in his meditation, he does not focus on the knee. He visualizes himself running on a beach, feeling the breeze, the joy of movement, the strength in his legs. He is creating a memory of the future, of a perfect physiology. He is giving his brain a new blueprint to build, a blueprint of fluidity and ease. The perception of safety. The most advanced practice is to retrain the brain to stop interpreting bodily sensations as a threat. The initiate, in a state of calm, brings his attention to the area of pain. But instead of doing so with fear, he does so with a scientific curiosity and a feeling of safety. He breathes into the sensation, and he repeats to himself, "I am safe." This is just a sensation. It's an old alarm signal. There is no danger anymore. This practice, known in some therapies as pain reprocessing therapy, teaches the brain to turn down the volume of the alarm, to unlearn the habit of chronic pain. The second protocol, transmitting the healing symphony, harmonizing the emissary. With the mind calm, the sovereign now turns to his emissary, the heart, to make it change the kingdom's music from the alarm of war to the symphony of peace and repair. The initiate knows that heart coherence is the most powerful anti-inflammatory signal he can generate. The coherence decree. His practice is a daily ritual. He sits in silence. He uses his breath to enter a state of coherence, feeling the smooth and harmonious rhythm in his chest. The projection of healing. Once he is in this state of high coherence, the master directs that energy. He visualizes the electromagnetic field of his heart as a warm, liquid, healing light, and with his intention, he sends that light to the part of his body that is experiencing pain or inflammation. He is not fighting the pain, he is bathing it in the frequency of safety, of love, and of coherence. He is sending the cells of that area the most powerful biochemical and energetic message possible. It is safe. The war is over. It is time to repair. The third protocol, rebuilding the kingdom walls, nurturing the guardian. Finally, the sovereign attends to the foundations, knowing that a fire cannot be put out if the kingdom's walls continue to let arsonists in. He adopts an anti-inflammatory diet as an act of wise governance. The dietary ceasefire. The initiate declares a ceasefire. He eliminates or drastically reduces the great arsonists of the modern diet: sugar, processed vegetable oils, sunflower, soy, etc., ultra-processed foods, and for many, foods they are sensitive to, such as gluten and dairy. The firefighters feast, and instead he organizes a feast for the natural firefighters of his body. His plate is filled with omega-3 fatty acids, from fatty fish like wild salmon and sardines, which are nature's most powerful anti-inflammatories. The polyphenol rainbow, from vibrantly colored vegetables, berries, and spices like turmeric and ginger, which are powerful modulators of the inflammatory response. Prebiotic fiber, to nourish the beneficial bacteria in his gut, which produce anti-inflammatory compounds like butyrate. The initiate understands that every meal is a choice. He can choose to pour gasoline on the fire of inflammation, or he can choose to douse it with the water of healing nutrition. Chronic pain is not a sentence, it is a conversation. It is an invitation from your body to examine the incoherence in your inner kingdom. It is a call to sovereignty. Chapter 9. The flow of real energy, healing fatigue. You have learned to decree calm in the midst of the storm and to put out the fire of inflammation. You have begun to bring peace and relief to your inner kingdom. Now we must address the most silent, most widespread and perhaps most debilitating epidemic of modern life, a condition that is not a disease, but the absence of life itself. We must talk about chronic fatigue. We live in a paradoxically exhausted civilization. Despite having more conveniences and labor-saving technologies than any other generation in history, a huge part of the population feels chronically tired. We wake up feeling like we haven't slept. We spend the day in a mental fog, craving the next coffee, the next energy drink, the next stimulus to keep us afloat. We have come to accept this state of low vitality as the inevitable price of modern life. But this is not life, it is survival. The initiate in the secrets of healing understands that energy is not a resource that is spent and must be refilled from the outside. True energy, radiant vitality, is not consumed, it is generated. And the factory of this energy resides within our own kingdom. Chronic fatigue is not a lack of fuel. It is a sign that the power plants of our kingdom are operating inefficiently or are in fact broken. To heal fatigue, we must stop looking for external solutions in the form of stimulants, which are like taking out a loan on your biology at an extremely high interest rate, and start the real work, that of repairing and optimizing energy production in our three centers of intelligence, the triad of exhaustion. How the three brains drain our energy: chronic fatigue, like anxiety and pain, rarely has a single cause. It is the result of a conspiracy, of a systemic incoherence between our mind, our heart, and our gut. The insomniac architect, the role of the mind. The rational mind is the biggest consumer of energy in the entire body. Your brain, while only making up 2% of your body weight, consumes over 20% of your oxygen and glucose. And the mode of thinking that consumes the most energy is worry and rumination. An overloaded architect, the one we have been pacifying, is a massive energy leak, the worry loop. When you worry, your mind is not simply thinking. It is running complex simulations of catastrophic futures over and over again. This process is incredibly demanding on a metabolic level. It's like leaving your computer's processor running at 100% capacity all day long. Inevitably, it overheats and burns out. Decision fatigue. The modern mind faces an unprecedented number of decisions every day. Every decision, no matter how small, consumes resources from the prefrontal cortex. When this capacity is depleted, we experience decision fatigue. We feel mentally exhausted, unable to make even the simplest decision, and we tend to choose the path of least resistance, which is often distraction or procrastination. A mental architect who never rests, who lives in a state of constant analysis and worry, is literally burning his kingdom's fuel in a fire of useless thoughts, leaving few resources for physical vitality or creativity. The emissary in chaos, the role of the heart. A heart in a state of emotional incoherence is not just a source of discomfort, it is an energetically inefficient engine. Cardiac cost. A chaotic and erratic heart rate is inefficient. The heart has to work much harder, beating faster and more forcefully to pump the same amount of blood. It's like driving a car with a misfiring engine. It consumes much more fuel to travel the same distance. The cortisol debt. Adrenal fatigue, a state of chronic emotional stress, as we already know, keeps the adrenal glands in a state of constant cortisol and adrenaline production. At first, this can feel like an energy rush, but this system is not designed to be on permanently. Over time, the adrenal glands burn out. They can no longer produce the amount of cortisol needed to maintain a healthy state of alertness. And then the crash occurs. This is the basis of what is often called adrenal fatigue. The person feels exhausted in the morning, needs stimulants to function, and may have an energy spike at night when cortisol should be low. The kingdom has accumulated an energy debt so great that it can no longer pay it. The guardian with cut supply lines, the role of the gut. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the root of many energy crises is in the very earth of our kingdom. The gut is the place where we extract energy from food. If this supply line is compromised, the entire kingdom suffers. Poor nutrient absorption. An inflamed gut or one with a leaky barrier cannot efficiently absorb nutrients. You can be eating the healthiest diet in the world, but if your gut is damaged, you are not assimilating the essential vitamins and minerals for energy production, such as B vitamins, iron, and magnesium. You are literally starving in the midst of abundance. Mitochondrial sabotage. This is the deepest connection. The chronic inflammation that originates in a dysfunctional gut is one of the greatest killers of our mitochondria. Inflammatory molecules and bacterial toxins that leak from a leaky gut travel through the bloodstream and directly damage these delicate power plants. Your mitochondria, bombarded by this inflammation, become inefficient. They cannot produce ATP cleanly, and the result is a deep cellular fatigue that no stimulant can touch. The first protocol, the conservation of mental energy, pacifying the architect. The sovereign understands that mental energy is his most precious and limited resource. He stops wasting it in the useless fire of worry. His first practice is the mental dump. The initiate knows that his mind is not a good warehouse. It is a good idea factory. Therefore, every night before sleeping, he empties the contents of his mind into a journal. He writes down every pending task, every idea, every worry. By externalizing these open loops, he frees his brain from the exhausting task of having to remember them. It's like closing all the unnecessary tabs in his mental browser, allowing the processor to function with renewed speed and efficiency. His second practice is the art of monofocal focus. The sovereign abandons the myth of multitasking. He knows it is a recipe for burnout and mediocrity. Instead, he practices working in time blocks. For a period of 60 to 90 minutes, he dedicates himself to a single, most important task, creating a fortress against all distraction. By concentrating his energy on a single point, like a laser, he achieves in an hour what a scattered mind takes an entire day to do, thus conserving his energy for the rest of the day. And finally, the sovereign practices conscious surrender. When he faces a problem that he cannot solve with logic, instead of exhausting himself in a loop of analysis, he hands it over. In his meditation, he presents the problem to his inner wisdom and lets it go, trusting that the solution will arrive at the right time. He frees his architect from the tyranny of having to know everything. The second protocol, the generation of coherent energy, harmonizing the emissary. The sovereign knows that a calm heart is the most efficient engine in the universe. His practice is the deliberate cultivation of heart coherence. He uses rhythmic breathing as his main tool. Several times a day, especially during moments of transition, he takes 3 minutes to breathe slowly and balancedly, inhaling through the nose for 5 seconds and exhaling through the nose for 5 seconds. This simple act is a reset for his nervous system, and he goes one step further. The initiate knows that emotion is energy, and he learns to cultivate regenerative emotions. In his coherence practice, he doesn't just breathe, he feels. He deliberately evokes the feeling of gratitude, of appreciation, of compassion. He bathes in this high frequency. He knows that he is not simply feeling good. He is generating the cleanest, most potent and most healing energy that exists. He is charging his cellular batteries from the generator of his own heart. The third protocol, the optimization of fuel, nurturing the guardian. Finally, the sovereign ensures that his kingdom is receiving the highest quality fuel. His practice is that of energetic nutrition. He focuses on nutrient-dense foods, especially those that support mitochondrial function, healthy fats, avocados, olive oil, fatty fish, a wide variety of colorful plants rich in antioxidants, and clean proteins. He hydrates his kingdom with pure water, knowing that water is the conductor of all the electrical currents in his body. And crucially, he synchronizes his eating with his circadian rhythm. He avoids heavy meals at night, when his digestive system should be resting. He gives his body a nightly fasting window of at least 12 hours, allowing energy to be diverted from digestion to repair and cellular cleansing. Chronic fatigue is not a sentence. It is the cry of an uncoordinated kingdom, of a sovereign who has forgotten how to rule. It is an invitation to unification. By learning to pacify your mental architect, to harmonize your emotional emissary, and to nurture your intestinal guardian with conscious foods, you stop being a victim of exhaustion. You become the engineer of your own energy. Chapter 10. The Sovereign's Dawn Ritual. You have traveled through the vast territories of your inner kingdom. You have learned to pacify the architect in your mind, to harmonize the emissary in your heart, and to nurture the guardian in the earth of your gut. You have learned to heal anxiety, to put out the fire of inflammation, and to restore the flow of your energy. But mastery does not reside in reactive healing, in the ability to put out fires. True sovereignty resides in proactive creation. The wise ruler does not wait for his kingdom to fall into chaos to restore order. He establishes order from the first moment of his day, ensuring that his kingdom prospers in a state of constant harmony. And the most crucial moment, the most powerful point of leverage to determine the quality of your entire day, is the first 60 minutes after waking. This is the rudder of your day. How you steer this rudder in the calm of the morning port will determine how you navigate the inevitable storms of the afternoon. Welcome to the final workshop. Welcome to the practice that unites all the wisdom we have explored. Welcome to the Sovereign's Dawn Ritual, the first victory of the day, reclaiming your sovereignty. To understand the power of a conscious morning ritual, we must first observe the unconscious routine of the majority. The day for many begins with an act of violence, the jarring sound of an alarm that pulls the nervous system from its rest and throws it directly into fight or flight mode. The second act is often an act of abdication. Before even connecting with their own being, the hand reaches for the phone, and in that instant, the sovereign hands over the keys to his kingdom to external forces. He allows the agenda of others, emails, the world's crises, the news, and the carefully edited lives of others social media, to become the first advisors of his day. He floods his freshly awakened brain with cortisol, comparison, and a sense of "I'm already late." He has lost the war before the day has even begun. The sovereign's dawn ritual is an act of rebellion against this abdication. It is the declaration that the first moments of your day belong to you. They are not for the world. They are for the tuning of your kingdom. It is not a productivity routine to get more done. It is a practice of sovereignty to be more. It is the act of winning your day before it starts, establishing the inner cause so that the rest of the day can unfold as the harmonious effect. The philosophy of the ritual, the council meeting, the sovereign's dawn ritual is not a random to-do list. It is a sacred sequence, a protocol designed to honor and unify your three brains. It is the moment when, as a sovereign, you meet with your governing council to establish a unified decree of health, peace, and purpose for the new day. The ritual is based on three fundamental intentions, each directed at one of your centers of intelligence. The first intention, aligning the kingdom with the cosmos, honoring the guardian. The first act of the wise sovereign is not about himself. It is an act of humility. It is the recognition that his kingdom is not an isolated entity, but a part of a much larger ecosystem, planet Earth and the solar system. His first task is to synchronize his biology with the great rhythm of nature. This is the act of honoring the guardian of the earth, the gut. As we saw in the chapter on the circadian rhythm, the most powerful signal to set our master clock is morning sunlight. Therefore, the first part of the ritual is profoundly physical and ancestral. Hydration. Upon waking, the sovereign drinks a large glass of water, often with a pinch of sea salt and a squeeze of lemon. He knows that his kingdom has dehydrated overnight and that water is the conductor of all the electrical currents in his body. Light. Then, before looking at any screens, he goes outside. He exposes his eyes and his skin to the morning sunlight for 10 to 15 minutes. He knows he is not just getting some fresh air. He is performing an act of cosmic communication. He is telling his master clock, it is daytime. It is time to awaken. This signal triggers the healthy release of cortisol that will give him energy and clarity, and at the same time, it starts the timer that will ensure optimal melatonin production at night. This first act aligns the microcosm of his body with the macrocosm of the universe. The second intention. Calibrating the kingdom's atmosphere, honoring the emissary. Once the kingdom is aligned with the cosmos, the sovereign turns to his second advisor. His attention travels from the outside inward to the center of his chest. His second intention is to establish the emotional climate for the day. This is the act of honoring the emissary, the heart. The sovereign knows that he can start his day in a state of stress and lack, or in a state of peace and abundance. The choice is his. And the most powerful tool for this choice is gratitude. The practice is not a mental list of thanks. It is an emotional immersion. The sovereign sits in silence. He breathes through his heart, and deliberately he evokes a feeling of genuine gratitude, not for what he wants to have, but for what he already has. He gives thanks for the simple miracle of his body that breathes, for the refuge of his home, for the love of a person or a pet. He bathes in that emotion. He feels the warmth, the expansion, the coherence in his chest, like an inner sun. He knows that he is not just feeling good. He is tuning the electromagnetic field of his kingdom to the frequency of reception, of peace, and of healing. He is creating the atmosphere in which miracles can flourish. The third intention, establishing the royal decree for the day, honoring the architect. Finally, with the body aligned and the heart coherent, the sovereign meets with his architect, not to give him a to-do list, but to give him his decree of being, his master intention for the day. The sovereign's question is not, what do I have to do today? It is, who do I choose to be today? Perhaps he chooses to be peace. His decree is, today I embody peace. I respond to every situation from my center of calm. Perhaps he chooses to be courage. His decree is, today I act with courage even in the face of fear. I take the step I have been postponing. Perhaps he chooses to be creativity. His decree is, today I am an open channel for inspiration. I see solutions and possibilities everywhere. The sovereign declaration. He declares this intention in silence or a whisper as a law for his kingdom. It is not a hope, it is a command, the imaginal rehearsal. To seal the decree, the sovereign dedicates the last few minutes to a brief rehearsal in the theatre of his mind. He sees himself moving through his day from that chosen state. He sees how he responds to a challenge with calm, how he interacts with others with understanding. He is giving his architect not just the law, but the blueprint of what that law looks like in action. The sovereign's workshop, the practical protocol. We have understood the sacred philosophy underlying the dawn ritual. It is not a productivity routine. It is an act of conscious governance. It is the moment when, as sovereigns, we meet with our council of three brains to establish a decree of harmony, health, and purpose for the new day. Now we will translate this wisdom into a practical protocol, a 15 to 30-minute routine that, if practiced with consistency, has the power to rewrite the story of your health and peace. Phase 1. The alignment of the kingdom, minutes 0 to 10. Honoring the guardian, the sovereign does not jump out of bed into chaos. He moves with deliberate intention, knowing that his first act set the tone for the entire day. The first act, conscious hydration. The initiate, ideally, has prepared a glass of pure water the night before. His first act is not to check his phone, but to drink. But he does not do so automatically. He holds the glass. He feels its temperature. And as he drinks, he feels the purifying water awakening every cell in his kingdom, which has dehydrated overnight. It is his first offering to the earth of his body. The second act, solar communion. Then the sovereign seeks out the light. He opens the windows wide, or ideally goes outside. For 5 to 10 minutes he bathes in the morning sunlight. He is not just getting some fresh air, he is performing an act of cosmic communication. He is telling his master clock, it is daytime. It is time to awaken. This signal triggers the healthy release of cortisol that will give him energy and clarity, and at the same time, it starts the timer that will ensure optimal melatonin production at night. He has aligned his microcosm with the macrocosm. Phase 2. The calibration of the atmosphere, minutes 10 to 20. Honoring the emissary with the body aligned with the cosmos. The sovereign now sits on his throne, his meditation chair. It is time to calibrate the inner atmosphere of his kingdom, anchoring in the heart. The initiate closes his eyes. He brings the attention of his mind, which normally resides in the head, and gently lowers it to the center of his chest, to the space of his heart. This is his emotional power center, coherent breathing. He begins the practice of rhythmic breathing that he already knows. He inhales through his nose for 5 seconds, feeling the air flow through his heart. He exhales through his nose for 5 seconds, feeling his heart relax. He maintains this gentle, constant rhythm, allowing his nervous system to shift from alert mode to calm mode. The infusion of gratitude. With the rhythm of coherence established, the sovereign opens the vault of his heart. He chooses 3 specific things for which he feels genuine gratitude in this moment. It is not a mental list, it is an immersion. He immerses himself in the feeling of appreciation for a loved one, for the beauty of a past moment, or for the simple miracle of his own body. He feels the warmth of that gratitude filling his chest, like an inner sun. He knows he is setting the atmosphere of his kingdom to the frequency of abundance and healing. Phase 3. The royal decree, minutes 20 to 25. Honoring the architect finally. With the body aligned and the heart coherent, the sovereign meets with his architect, not to give him a to-do list, but to give him his decree of being, his master intention for the day, the choice of being. The initiate does not ask, what do I have to do today? He asks, who do I choose to be today? Perhaps he chooses to be peace. His decree is, today I embody peace. I respond to every situation from my center of calm. Perhaps he chooses to be courage. His decree is, today I act with courage even in the face of fear. I take the step I have been postponing. Perhaps he chooses to be creativity. His decree is, today I am an open channel for inspiration. I see solutions and possibilities everywhere. The sovereign declaration. He declares this intention in silence or a whisper as a law for his kingdom. It is not a hope. It is a command, the imaginal rehearsal. To seal the decree, the sovereign dedicates the last few minutes to a brief rehearsal in the theatre of his mind. He sees himself moving through his day from that chosen state. He sees how he responds to a challenge with calm, how he interacts with others with understanding. He is giving his architect not just the law, but the blueprint of what that law looks like in action. The adaptability of the sovereign. The sovereign understands that this ritual is not a rigid formula. It is a framework. There are days when he can dedicate 30 minutes to it, and there are days when he only has 5. On those days, he does not abandon it. He condenses it. 1 minute of conscious hydration, 2 minutes of morning sunlight while breathing deeply, 1 minute of heart coherence, evoking a feeling of gratitude, 1 minute to set his intention of being 5 minutes, but 5 minutes that can completely transform the trajectory of the next 24 hours. The Sovereign's Dawn ritual is not a routine. It is a declaration. It is the affirmation made each morning that you are the creator of your experience, the healer of your body, and the master of your emotions. You don't have to find time for this practice. You invest time in it. And the universe returns that investment to you multiplied by 1,000, in the form of a day lived with more energy, more peace, and more purpose. You have received the complete score. You have learned to conduct your inner orchestra, unifying your 3 brains into a symphony of well-being. You have reclaimed your throne. Now all that remains is to govern. Along this path we have undertaken a peaceful revolution. We have met the 3 great advisors, the architect in the mind, the emissary in the heart, and the guardian in the earth of the gut. We have learned to listen to their languages, to honor their wisdom, and to unify their voices. In the Sovereign's workshop, you have learned to pacify your architect, to harmonize your emissary, and to nurture your guardian. You have applied this unified power to decree calm, to put out the flame of inflammation, and to restore the flow of your energy. And you have integrated all this wisdom into the sacred dawn ritual. The civil war is over. Peace has been signed. Your mind, your heart, and your gut are no longer 3 forces in conflict, but a unified council of sages, governed by the calm of your consciousness. The final truth, the one you must carry with you from today on, is this. Healing is not the absence of symptoms. It is the presence of inner harmony. You are not a body full of problems that need fixing. You are the sovereign of an inner kingdom that, when governed with wisdom, expresses its natural state, perfect health. Your journey does not end with the end of these words. It is now that your reign of well-being truly begins. Your practice from today on is simple. In every moment, in every decision, pause. Gather your counsel. Ask your mind, your heart, and your gut, and listen to the answer that emerges from the silence of their unity. Remember always, you are not the victim of your biology. You are its sovereign. If this journey toward inner harmony has resonated with you, we invite you to continue this exploration. Subscribe to our channel, Path of Knowledge, for more guides to personal mastery. Like this video as a declaration of peace in your own kingdom. Share this secret of the 3 brains with someone who needs to find their own harmony. Thank you for your time, for your dedication, and for the brave decision to claim the throne of your own well-being.